The election was certified. Vice President Pence pisses off the MAGA movement, and chaos at the Capitol. All this and more on Freedom Roundup. Welcome to Freedom Roundup. My name is Kress Cambers. I am the treasurer for the Jackson County Republican Committee and Representative Jeff Coleman's campaign manager. To my right, I am joined with special guest Greg Moody, and across the table from me, Representative Jeff Coleman from the 32nd District. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chris.
What's going on, Chris?
All right, so let's talk about the chaos at the Capitol, guys. First, let's talk about why there is chaos at the Capitol. With the election being certified, we are going to do what Sean does every time. We're going to do this roundtable roundup here. And Jeff, we're going to do you last.
Awesome.
All right. So, Greg, do you think there was any clear path at all for President Trump?
Clear path in terms of what? Of being president at this point?
Yeah, serving president for another 4 years.
No, it doesn't look like it at this point. I think it's pretty much over. And honestly, legally, there wasn't a whole bunch that Congress could have done. I mean, they're just there basically to certify the vote. So, I mean, at this point, he's not going to be president. And with the way things are going, with what McConnell's doing in the Senate right now, he could very well get impeached, convicted, and never be able to run for office again.
Well, so then what was the point of Senator Hawley from Missouri and Senator Ted Cruz from Texas? Was that just political grandstanding then?
I mean, to some extent, I don't really know what they're thinking or what ultimately their motives are. Basically trying to tap into MAGA voters. I think that's absolutely true. With Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, I think they tend to be principled, Ted Cruz in particular, and I think it was just that they really think that there was something going on with these elections.
So Rand Paul is pretty principled, right, Greg? But he didn't vote the same way that Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley did.
I mean, that's true. They tend to be. Ted Cruz tends to be a little bit more of a conservative. Rand Paul tends to be a little bit more of a libertarian. But I'm going to be honest with you, Chris. I don't know why they did that. I really have no idea why they chose. One chose to do it and one chose not to.
Can I intervene?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So Ted Cruz came out he wanted to put together a commission so that they could investigate these votes to make sure that they were correct votes. And so that's the purpose that he stated that he did this for.
In your guys' opinion, I mean, a simple probably yes or no would work. Do you think there was fraud in this election? Do you think that Trump did have a leg to stand on at some point? Jeff, go ahead and I'll have Greg answer.
I absolutely think that there were irregularities involved in the election, and as I see more and more people coming forth, putting out information about what they saw and what they were a party to, I do believe that there was fraud. I do think that there was irregularities. Was there enough to cause an overturn of the election? That's what we don't know because nobody went out and looked at it. So I think if we would have at least had some kind of an investigation, regardless of how it turned out, it would have tempered all of this frustration that we're seeing out in the streets right now.
I agree with Jeff. I think that's really the problem is we've never had this conversation. And, they say that on Twitter, they keep saying, these claims about election fraud are disputed. Well, it would be awesome if we could have that dispute. I mean, it's basically been shut off, any conversation. We don't really know what the extent of the fraud was. Personally, I tend to think Democrats always cheat. But I mean, with the mail-in balloting, they've been able to cheat on steroids, but we just don't really know what the extent of the fraud is. And I think with what they've done in Pennsylvania, where basically, you can mail it in and then, it could come in after the date and then they weren't matching signatures. it just really opened everything up to fraud, and I would say maybe more rigged, just the way the election laws were set up. It was set up so that Democrats would win and so Joe Biden would win.
I tend to agree 110% on that assessment from both of you. Excuse me. You know, you were talking about if they would have, Jeff, if they would have just went to the courts would have just heard it, just to amuse us. Okay, what do you have? Show me. If the state legislatures would say, what do you got? Show me.
But to interject something real quick, we talked about this tonight. There's a YouTube of the Michigan State Legislature, the State House Legislature, who held a hearing, and they had multiple people come in to testify, who testified on behalf of being watchers during the election,
right?
And the things that they saw that were I don't know if it was called fraudulent, but definitely irregularities where votes got tabulated more than one time because the machines were jamming and they didn't know how to correct it.
And all these people testified under oath,
and they also signed affidavits that they were giving truthful statements.
Okay. To continue my statement, what I want to say is if the courts probably humored the Trump supporters, Republicans, really, I think this MAGA movement was bigger than just the Republican Party. It brought in minorities. It brought in Democrats, the Reagan-crats, what we saw during the Reagan election. It brought in a whole group of different people. Point being, if these courts would have just taken it on to humor us, to look at it, okay, well, look. I think this would have been a lot different. Conservatives, Republicans, Trump-supporting people, we really don't have an outlet to go off of, right? We don't have, every time we post something on Facebook, every time we post something on Twitter, it always goes against their community guidelines. Zuckerberg and Dorsey are just running this sucker from the far left. So once we just wanted to be heard. Really, I think the rally happened. We just wanted to be heard. And Trump was up there giving a rah-rah speech. Instead of calming the Trump supporters down that were out there, he just got them even more riled up than they already were. They were angry, they were riled up, and he just exacerbated it 110%. And toward the end of his speech, he said, "Let's go to the Capitol." Probably the wrong move for that. Then the riot at the Capitol happened. And I want to kind of touch on all that also. With him saying that, you've seen a mass movement, tens, hundreds of thousands of people going up to the Capitol at one time. Police didn't know what was going on. There weren't enough police there, and that's the one thing I've heard from the media. They said, where was security? Where was the police? They were nowhere to be found. First of all, let me put this out there, guys. First of all, we're Republicans. We're Trump supporters. We're for law enforcement. We're for rule, law, and order. Okay? The police probably did not see us as a threat. Guaranteed they didn't see us as a threat because we do not have a track record of chaos and anarchy anywhere we go. We have been to many rallies. We've seen many rallies. And what happens? After the rallies, people disperse. They go home. They get in their car. They leave.
They clean up.
So the police probably were not thinking, oh, we need to have extra security here for these people because they're not going to cause blocks of chaos, buildings on fire, cars flipped over. So really, that's where I think the lack of security came from. They're Trump supporters. Honest to God, the Trump supporters, they're not going to cause damage like we see at BLM and Antifa rallies. I.e., over the summer, what happened in D.C. when half the city was burnt down. But I don't know. What was your assessment of that day? Were you able to see what was going on? I'm going to pass this over to Greg. What were you thinking in that moment when you seen that big crowd rush the Capitol like they did?
When I first heard about it, actually it was you actually texted me about it. I was at work, and I actually couldn't. I almost thought you were joking. It was just really a sense of disbelief. I think what's funny about the whole thing is just you really don't hear anybody talking about defund the police anymore. Of course, as soon as they needed the police, they called the police. They asked for the National Guard. When it's Trump supporters, we like the police. But I mean, more than anything, I think it was just a disappointment. I had mixed feelings about it in the sense that, I can understand what their frustration was, but I don't think storming the Capitol. I mean, why would you do that? What is the end game there? What are you going to do? You're going to storm the Capitol and taking pictures. I mean, good grief. Why are you taking? They're just you're going to get arrested. And I mean, the other thing is you see like on news media outlets, they're saying like, help us identify these protesters. Did you see that once happen with the Black Lives Matter protests or riots where they were saying, help us find these people? And I just think there's been a double standard here, the way that this has been treated versus the way that was treated. And really, you have to be consistent on both. It is not right to use rioting and violent protest to achieve an end, whether you're a conservative or whether you're liberal.
The problem here is that there have been no outlets to the statements we made earlier. There have been no outlets for any of the right, the conservative people to release that frustration. And I want to go back to the fact that had one of the courts, any of them, taken on the case and allowed for the evidence to be heard, whether they came back and said, yeah, you know what, you're right, there's enough evidence that we need to take this further, or whether they came back and said, you know what, we looked at all the evidence, we don't see it. But at least it got heard. How many, I think, was it 90 cases that were filed, and not one judge accepted the case to take it any further. And so what are we supposed to do? You have the media, you have the social media, everything is against what we believe. And nobody is there to take on. And so people are getting to the point, and I don't know that it's going to stop at this point. I think as we go forward and everybody thinks it's going to calm down, and the fact that Biden and the Democrats, both on the Senate and on the Senate and also on the House side, even some of the Republicans now are taking the fact that they may try to impeach him. And all that's going to do... What
would be the purpose of this?
Nothing.
What is the purpose other than to stop him from running in 2024?
It's not even that. They just want to keep pushing him down further. They just want to crush the man. They don't want him to have any legacy. They don't want him to have anything to come back in history.
He has been the best damn thing that has happened to this Republican, spineless, weak Republican Party since Ronald freaking Reagan.
He has shown the light on how bad the swamp really is.
Both political parties,
Absolutely.
And I'm including Roy Blunt in this. Sorry. Not sorry. You don't have to say anything over there, okay, Jeff? But I'm going to include Roy Blunt in this also. He plays the political winds like nobody else. Because his state turned for Trump in the 2016 election overwhelmingly, and then again in 2020, he had to play with what he had. I think he would have been the same if we'll have to see with Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, Beijing Biden. See what happens with him, because I'm sure he's going to play the same political winds. He's too careful of a politician. He'll play both sides like a fiddle. It does not matter to him. Josh Hawley, on the other hand, is one strong SOB, and I really think that the MAGA movement Republicans, the citizens of America that voted for Donald Trump through this MAGA movement, is really grasping on to Josh Hawley right now for this exact reason. He's a strong Republican. He's a strong conservative. He wants to get stuff done. I almost cussed there. I caught myself. In Washington. And if he has to step on a couple of toes, that's fine. At least it's going to get done. But, Jeff, you're right. You know, there was no outlet. Things happened. Things got out of control. Was it right for those guys to break into the Capitol?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to the courts. Here's the thing about the courts that's really frustrating for me is, on one hand, I understand that they don't want to be the ones who are dictating and determining the outcome of the race, right? So they don't want to get involved. But yet they'll turn around and get involved in just about every other leftist issue and put a squash to anything that Trump does on that side. In fact, today I read that they have just turned away Trump's administration asylum information, that informational rules, guidelines, that they're not going to allow that to happen now, that they are going to go back to the old rules. They were supposed to go into effect Monday, and they are now saying that they're not going to allow that to happen. They'll get involved in those things, but they're not going to get involved in anything that even comes close to helping Trump out or the people. And so I kind of blame some of this on them for not allowing us to get some relief through the system to say, hey, we're at least looking at it for you.
Whether it go in his favor or not.
Exactly. But do I think that what happened at the Capitol was right? No, absolutely not. I get frustrated again, though, because what happened was not right. But when you look at what happened over the summer and you compare the two, which is what everybody today on the media is trying to do, and they're trying to compare it in a way of saying, oh, look at the white privilege. Nobody went after them like they went after the Black Lives Matter people. Really? Did you remember what happened over the summer? The cities were telling their own police departments to stand down, let them loot, let them take all the stuff, let them burn down the buildings, let them burn down those buildings that belong to small business people that are worked hard their whole lives. And guess what? The majority of people that lost in those burned buildings were people of color.
So let me play this for you guys. CNN Chris Cuomo.
Now, too many see the protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice. And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Amen. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
As he's virtue signaling up there about protesters, show me where it says protesters are supposed to be polite and peaceful. Well, the First Amendment actually says that. Peaceful as symbol. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. But he has a problem calling this an insurrection. The Trump supporters, the MAGA red-hatted guys running into the Capitol, and it just should be peaceful. It should have been peaceful, guys. That's it. But these scoundrel Republicans, they can't hold their anger. They have to rage and run up to the Capitol and destroy it all, says the left-wing media. But what do we have to say about that, though, guys?
I have nothing to say other than it is so hypocritical. It's so hypocritical. Let's see him come out and say the exact same thing. I said, amen, Chris, because it fits right? It fits for today, but that was said back in the summer when the BLM and Antifa people were out rioting in the streets and burning everything down. That's when he was talking about. That's what he was talking about. That was from back then. But let's hear him say that today, because the same narrative fits for today.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, there's definitely a double standard here. Basically, any time. I mean, this has always been true. This has always been true with the left. And it is just true of the left in general, is for them to ends justify the means. When it was their people protesting, they encouraged it. They thought it was fine. And if you disagreed, you're an awful, terrible human being, and you're worse than Hitler. But and then as soon as conservatives do it, as I was saying earlier, they want the police to come in. And for me, There was a part of me, and maybe I was being unreasonable, but I was hoping this would kind of be a kumbaya moment, like a come together moment. Because for me, it took me aback a little bit. I'm like, you know what? We really need to calm down. Like, we're about to destroy the institutions that have brought us freedom, that have brought us unheard of prosperity, that have made us the greatest nation on earth, and we're just going to destroy them. We're going to burn them down. And I almost expected or hoped that, not from Democrats in office, not from, say, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. I totally expected them to act the way they're acting. But just from, like, rank and file liberals, just to be like, it was wrong when we did it over the summer. And we see that now. But you don't see that on social media.
Zero accountability.
Zero accountability. And what Pelosi and Schumer are doing right now, they are throwing gasoline on the fire. And the problem you have, there are no more Joe Liebermans in the Democratic Party. There's no more Zell Millers. If you had a Joe Lieberman right now, he'd be saying we shouldn't use the 25th Amendment. We shouldn't impeach. We just need to let this go. Joe Biden's going to be president soon.
What about the guy from, he's slipping my mind right now. I don't know why. West Virginia, senator from West Virginia.
Manchin.
Yeah, Joe Manchin. You don't think he'd be a reasonable, moderate voice on the Democrat side, or do you think he's just putting on a show?
I think I hope I'm wrong, but I think the whole thing with him saying that he was going to vote against packing the courts, I think that was show so that they could win Georgia. That was a talking point so that they could win Georgia, so you could still vote for Democrats and there would be no court packing. He is probably the last thing standing in the way between the republic, between the balance of power that we've had for about 150 years with 9 Supreme Court justices, and just packing the court and basically Democrats completely running the federal government.
So go ahead, Jeff.
I was just in that realm. Think about how powerful he has just become, because he could be the one vote that tips the scales. And think about how much power he holds at this point in time as a independent senator.
I want to play you guys an excerpt from Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News. Tell me what you think about this.
When thousands of your countrymen storm the Capitol building, you don't have to like it. We don't. You can be horrified by the violence, and as we said, and we'll say it again, we are horrified. It's wrong. But if you don't bother to pause and learn a single thing from it, from your citizens storming your Capitol building, then you're a fool. You lack wisdom and you lack self-awareness. You have no place running a country. We got to this sad, chaotic day for a reason. It is not your fault. It is their fault.
There you go. If you don't understand, Roy Blunt, why we stormed the Capitol building, you're a damn fool. We got here for a reason.
And without trying to justify rioting or storming the Capitol building, there's that very famous Martin Luther King Jr. quote saying that riots are the language of the unheard. And a lot of people will pull that out of context to say that he himself was justifying riots. And if you listen to him in his total context, and if you listen to him in his other speeches, he very strongly condemns rioting. But the point of it is simply that there was a reason behind it. People felt so desperate. They felt like they had no other option. But people felt like they were unheard. And I think that was true of the people who were storming the Capitol. And again, I don't condone it in any way, but they felt like they were unheard, and they took it out in the wrong way, and probably the dumbest way possible. But nevertheless, they felt like they were unheard, and so they acted out.
No, I don't really have a whole lot more to put to that. I think you summed it up nicely. Tucker Carlson has such a way of putting things, and he is absolutely right. I think that Tucker has hit it right on the head that it doesn't matter what party you're from, Democrat or Republican, they should be listening to the people, because the people are getting frustrated. And I've been hearing it on social media a lot here. And as these pent-up emotions get going, you're starting to hear things again like term limits, which, personally I would think typically term limits are your voting, right? But what's happened in our society is that we have so much money involved that someone that tries to come in and want to do a good job.
So much money where?
So much money coming in from lobbyists, from corporations.
In politics.
Right, in politics, that sway the voters' minds, because the voters don't always know all the facts. And we as a society have become a little bit complacent in not really doing the research that we need to do on the individuals that we're voting on.
So how would you combat that at a state level, at your level, Jeff? How do we get out there? How do you get your issues out there? How do you make your constituents aware of what is going on in your district, what's going on at the Capitol, and what's going on at the state of Missouri?
We try to put things out via town hall meetings, through our Capitol reports, and getting the information out to what's going on in the Capitol through email and such. So we try to be active out in the community, and even going out and talking through the chambers and such. I know that Blue Springs is going to start up their legislative breakfasts again, so that we can help them understand what's going on at the Capitol, and try to help them with the issues that affect them locally. But we also have term limits.
Right. You guys also have term limits. Before I go there, let's hold that thought. You talked about Capitol reports. What's a Capitol report?
Capitol reports are put out by the individual representatives or senators that we send out individually from our office, what is happening, both from the Capitol standpoint and also on an individual standpoint.
Well, how would your constituents or other people from the state get your Capitol report?
Sure.
Where would they go for that?
They go to the best way to get that is to go to house.mo.gov, house.mo for Missouri.gov, and then that will bring you up to a page, and you'll see members on there, and you can go to your state representative, or you can go to any representative, including myself, Jeff Coleman. A little plug for myself. And when you hit on that member's name, it'll bring you up to their page, and on that page it has a button that says Capitol Report, and that allows you to sign up for it.
Okay. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off from before, but we were talking about term limits before I cut you off. Term limits at Missouri state level.
Right. In the Missouri state level, we have 8 years. In the House side, that represents 4 different terms. And you have 8 years on the Senate side, which represents 2 separate terms. So you could essentially have 16 total years of service in the legislature. On the House side, 8 years. On the Senate side, 8 years.
What's your opinion on term limits?
I think there's good and bad to term limits. I think that an 8-year term is too short, because and I probably would not have said that as just a constituent not having any experience in being a legislator. But the problem is as you get down there, what happens is there's a whole cycle of learning, and the lobbyists swarm around you in those early stages because they know you're new. They know you don't really know what's going on.
Like buzzards on a dead frog in the middle of the road, man.
I hate to say it, but there's some truth to that. You're inexperienced. You don't know the issues that are already. What happens is if a bill does not get passed, it continues on every year. It cycles through, and every year it may change it up a little bit, but for the people that have been there for a couple of years or more, you understand those issues. You've already heard them. And so if it's a good bill, it'll eventually get passed. But if it's not, it's just going to die. And the lobbyists know that. So what they'll do is they'll hold it for a little while. They'll bring it back when there's new people coming in. And so as you learn those issues, it's right by the time you get all the issues down and you know them all and you know what's going on, all of a sudden you're termed out.
When you finally get to know the turns, the nooks, the crannies of what you're supposed to be doing, you fully learned your job, you're gone.
Yep.
What do you think about term limits, Greg? Do you think they're helpful? Do you think they're hurtful? Do you think we could implement them as not a term limit, but maybe an age limit at the federal level? Because we know what's his name, Gomer Pyle up there. I can't feel my face. Pelosi, Chucky Schumer.
They're 80s.
They're in their mid to late 80s. What are we thinking, guys? Why do we keep electing these people? I know my grandma's 88. She's got a touch of dementia. Her mind ain't right.
Is her name Joe Biden?
Who? Come on, man. Malarkey. So what are you thinking, Greg? How do you see this? What do you think about all this? And then we need to move on to Mike Pence jacking up the MAGA movement.
Well, I just want to say that as Joe Biden would say, I really think that helps President-elect Kamala, whatever her name is.
Just in general on term limits, I've kind of gone back and forth on this, and maybe there's a case to be made that in some cases you want to have people that are there that are insiders that have been around and seen Washington for a while. But with the way things are going right now, I think the stronger case is it's better to get new blood in there. You don't want people who are entrenched. And it really prevents individuals from consolidating power, like Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, other senators who have been there forever and ever, other Congress people who have been there forever and ever. And you never have a shortage of people who want to run for office.
Very, very good. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So Mike Pence was given the task from President Trump on social media and in front of the media that he better look into this and overturn the election or help the election get overturned. He knows what to do. He's done the right thing. President Trump has tweeted multiple times that his wonderful Vice President Mike Pence better help him with this election. Well, Mike Pence fell through. Trump is upset. The MAGA Republicans are upset. Trump basically threw Pence under the bus. He threw his Supreme Court justices under the bus. He threw every MAGA candidate that rode his coattails to Washington under the bus for not taking up this issue. Now, we spoke before that President Trump asked, what can we do? What's in the Constitution that we could do that this could probably swing my way? And they came up with the idea, and I read that from the constitutioncenter.org. We talked about it on the last podcast, that would take one representative, one senator to stand up with a written statement saying, they disagree with the election results. Well, come to find out, then they would deliberate for 2 hours and come to a conclusion after that for each state. Come to find out, Mike Pence was on the path to do that, but he said constitutionally there's nothing else he could do. He couldn't just overturn the election. President Trump got upset. He didn't like that. So now he threw Mike Pence under the bus. The entire MAGA movement hates Mike Pence for not doing more or basically going outside of the Constitution for this. Honestly, I don't think that's fair. Mike Pence has been one of Trump's most loyal allies that he's had. He has stood by President Trump through everything, during the impeachment, during the insanity happening in the White House with multiple staffers in and out, with other allegations happening, coming out, even during the campaign, the 2016 campaign, with he grabs women from the Access Hollywood bus. Mike Pence has been there for President Trump since 2016, before 2016, when they were campaigning together. And I really, really think this is unfair for the Trump supporters, for the MAGA movement, to turn their back on Mike Pence. This is not fair for Mike, or Vice President Pence. I say that like I know him personally. I call him Mike. For Vice President Pence. I do want to know your guys' thought. Right here on YouTube, there's a comment section. Write it down. This is going to be on Facebook. Write it down. Comment. What's your thoughts? Do you agree with President Trump? Do you agree with the MAGA movement that Pence is the most hated man in the movement? Or do you agree with me that it's kind of unfair and he could have waited till 2024 for another run? But I think all of this and extending it out this far and gone this far, he kind of ruined his chances for 2024.
Definitely would have to agree with that, especially in reference to his chances in 2024. Right now emotions are high, and everybody's all riled up. But unfortunately, our memories are very short. I go back to what happened in...
I disagree with that. If we're talking about President Trump, the media is going to remind us every single day. That's why he's not going to be at the inauguration, because it'll focus, the media will focus on Donald Trump and not on Joe Biden.
That's not why he's not going to be at the inauguration.
Well,
he doesn't want to give them the...
CNN would focus in on Trump the entire time. How dare he be here? What a traitor. And it would take away from...
He's not doing it for those reasons.
He's not doing it for those reasons.
He's doing it because he's trying to...
He's selfish.
Well,
as much as I like Trump, guys, you know what? What hat am I wearing?
A MAGA hat.
Did I not run for office as a what?
A Trump Republican.
A MAGA candidate, man.
You did.
I mean...
I was there.
I get it.
You did. I was there. You absolutely did.
But I'm just telling you.
I'm all for the Trump movement, but let's come down to reality, guys. We have to be practical. We have to be pragmatic. We have to tell the truth. We cannot continue to look into far space and say this is going to get overturned, this is going to get overturned, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. QAnon said so. That's BS. We have to look at the here. We have to look at the now. Is Joe Biden your president? Will he be your president?
I mean, he's going to be president. On January 20th, he's going to be president of the United States, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. Whatever happened in the election, and he's been certified. The Electoral College has voted, and he's constitutionally the president of the United States now. But going to what you were saying about Mike Pence, if I can, I'm actually kind of glad to hear you say that, because I thought I was going to be sitting here saying, well, you guys can hate me, and anybody who's a MAGA Republican, Trump Republican, whatever you want to call him, can hate me. But what did you expect him to do? He doesn't have any legal authority. The Constitution does not put legal authority in the sitting vice president to overturn the election. An election that would be absolutely insane. The guy, he's sitting there, he's presiding over it, he's certifying the election, and that's pretty much it's a ceremonial role, and that's what he did.
100% accurate.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with both of you. Is Joe Biden my president? I have to say, yeah, I don't like it. I'm not going to just sit around and do nothing about it. But yeah, he's all of our president, and we just have to take this to heart and do what we have to do in order to build the votes back up again the next time and make sure we get out and vote. Now, what's going to happen between now and the next vote, it's going to depend on how we react with everything. If they go to the socialist side of things, if they start getting radical, then we'll have to relook at things. But right now, there's not a whole lot we can do.
So, guys, before we wrap it up, I got two more things. We can just touch on this real quick. Listening to 17 KCMO this morning, Pete Mundo's morning show, and he had on Ann Coulter this morning, and she did not speak highly of Trump anymore. There was a little bit of hostility behind all that, wasn't there?
A little bit. I think she feels she's a little scorned, I think. She was supposed to be, if you remember in 2016, she was one of Trump's biggest supporters, and then all of a sudden he was saying that he didn't know who she was, and she was mad about the wall, et cetera, that it didn't get built. So
it was a good interview. She told a lot of truths in that interview. I'm glad that Pete did the interview with her. She did have a lot of truths in there that I agreed with, but she was like scorched earth, man. Came down on him hard. Last question I want to ask Jeff real quick. In 2018, you ran for state representative. You won your race. Was that because of President Trump? Did you get into politics because of President Trump? Kind of like I got into politics because of Barack Obama. Seeing what he started doing to the country, and that really heightened my senses for politics. And what really made me follow and jump in and dive deep into politics was because of President Trump. I don't know if that's how you felt. What was your reasoning to run for state representative, I guess that I'm asking, and was President Trump a catalyst for it?
I'd have to say I kind of agree with you that probably the catalyst for me was the Obama era, because he scared me half to death going in with his policies. And I go back to one of the real big issues for me, believe it or not, was his wife. I remember when he was running against Hillary Clinton, and they were in Nevada, I believe, and he won. I think he won Nevada. It was what the deal was. And she came out on public television and said that was the first time in her life that she was proud to be an American. And that just really got to me. Then when he went around and he did his apologetic tour and bowing down to other nations, that really was the catalyst. When Trump came on board, that really, I was a little bit, to be honest with you, a little bit shy with Trump because of some of the rhetoric and how he went about things. But the more I saw his policies, and the more I saw that he was shining a light on all the bad stuff that was going on back in D.C., the more that really encouraged me. So yeah, I think Trump was a big reason for that. The big catalyst, I think, though, was when we go back to Obama.
I was just going to say, literally bowing down. Like, that is not a figure of speech. He literally was bowing down to foreign leaders.
Right. That's exactly right. And so, I want to real quickly say all the things that have happened in the Capitol, we've kind of gone through that, maybe ad nauseum. But I also want to point out that we, this week, were all in the House, the State House of Missouri, were inaugurated, sworn in, however you want to say it, on Wednesday. And there were, I don't know, a couple hundred Trump people out in front of the state capitol, and not once were there any issues. It was calm. Of course, they were yelling and talking about and getting excited. They were singing. They were praying. It was just a good protest, peaceful protest with a good message. And that goes back to all the things that we said earlier about what we expect from Trump people.
Amen, Jeff.
Amen. A woman and the 8 children, too.
I like it.
So, I'm like a Baptist preacher. I'm going to say I'm going to wrap this up 4 hours ago, and here I am. I promise. The last question. Will Joe Biden serve his full term? Jeff, yes or no?
No.
Greg?
Absolutely not.
Kamala Harris be president?
Absolutely.
She's gonna take over.
You heard it right here. For Jeff Coleman, for Greg Moody, my name is Kress Cambers, and this has been Freedom Roundup.
Good night.
Good night.
Brought to you by the Jackson County Republican Party. Contribute at jacomo.gop. That's JACOMO.GOP. And promotional considerations given by Heartland Funding Incorporated, helping promote traditional values and candidates. Contribute at fundingtheheartland.com.